Hey there, Internet. Awkward Gamer here. Now, today's game is a little gem that I actually should have been able to talk about a while ago. You see, it's been sitting in my Steam wishlist for at least a couple months. I couldn't even tell you how long, to be honest. And then, a little bit ago, it went on sale, so I finally bought it. And then it's been sitting installed on my laptop here for at least probably another month. And I don't know, I ignored it. And finally, a bunch of guys over at a reliable source for game opinions of mine actually were just talking nonstop about the game. So I finally decided to give it a shot, and here we go. So today's game is Darkest Dungeon. It is a complete unforgiving bastard, and also it's just a weird mix of a dungeon crawler, RPG, and tactical adventure game. It reminds me a lot of the really old roguelike dungeon crawlers like Swords and Serpents for the NES, which, by the way, one of my favorite games. Now this game does have a story. It's about a rich old coot who hires a bunch of people to dig a series of catacombs beneath his mansion, and they end up opening the gates to madness, and blah blah blah. It doesn't really matter. The story here isn't that important, and it's also not even mentioned that much aside from the intro. Basically, it just gives you a reason for the game to exist. But that's not what the game is about. Also, the graphics in here are fairly basic. They're not bad, they're just kind of basic. Everything is 2D, and the animation is fairly simple, but it does still look good. To be honest, the overall art style actually somehow fits the game kind of perfectly. The simplistic graphics don't really distract you from the gameplay and what's actually going on, but they complement it pretty nicely. Similarly, the music and sound design are kind of simplistic in their nature. It is there, the ambiance fits the game, but it doesn't distract from the game. It doesn't take away from what's really important here. And what is important here is the gameplay itself. To get into the gameplay, I will start with kind of explaining what you're doing. In the game, you have an endless stream of heroes coming into a small hamlet outside the mansion with the subterranean portal to Oblivion. And you get to send them into this dungeon in waves. However, it's not as simply as just choosing 4 heroes and then smashing bad guys in the face.
To my folly, and a curse upon us all.
For starters, this game is not generous with the supplies. Any supplies that you do need will cost you money. And money, likewise, is also not really easy to come by. And the enemies here are not exactly pushovers, so you have to play smart. You can't just go in with a bunch of brick house looking fuckers and steamroll every enemy you find, swallowing down a couple dozen potions after every battle. In this game, that just won't work. For starters, your heroes are randomly representative of a myriad of different classes, each with different attacks and abilities. And also, each character will have a different personality from your other characters. This personality will change like their base stats, or they'll have a different preferred position on the battlefield.
Against the bloodshed.
So, getting a team of just 4 brickhouse fuckers would be pretty difficult on its own, let alone actually winning a battle with them. And I mentioned preferred positions. If your characters aren't standing in their preferred position, they might not be able to use some or even any of their attacks. Or if they can, if the enemies are standing in just the right spot, your attacks might not hit anyway. So you really have to play tactically here and plan for pretty much every eventuality when choosing your party. And to add to that madness, each character also has personality traits, some positive or negative, that will affect how you can use them. Some of them, for example, will have phobias, like zoophobia, which will mean that when facing against beasts, that character will suffer an extra stress penalty, meaning they'll get stressed out a lot quicker while fighting enemies. While other characters may have positive traits, things that maybe strengthen them while in low light, or while low on health, or will make them work better with other characters. So it's really, again, it's a lot of strategic thinking here. You really have to plan out your parties and your characters and how they're going to work together. And even still, that's just the tip of what you have to manage. Another thing here to think about, not just in battle while exploring the dungeon, is the amount of torchlight you have. As the light level gets lower, enemies will have a better chance of sneaking up on you. You'll lose the ability to scout ahead for traps and treasures. You'll become less accurate with your attacks. Some of your characters might fear the dark, so there's extra stress there. Overall, it's just one more important thing you really have to focus on. And I've mentioned stress a couple times now. That is another big thing in this game. Stress matters a lot. If your characters get too stressed, different things will happen, and none of them are good. For example, they may get confused, or angry, or scared, and any of those things will impact how they work in battle. They might start missing more, they might not attack or attack the wrong people. When the rest of your party attacks, they might insult them or yell at them, which causes higher stress in your other party members. And while it seems like stress just makes battle more hectic, it's worse than that. If one of your characters gets too stressed, they'll just go nuts and then die. And when someone dies in this game, they are dead. It doesn't matter if it's a new character you just picked up or someone you've been leveling since the beginning of the game that you maxed out all the stats and gear on. This game does permadeath. That means you have no save states, no checkpoints, no backups. The game is just completely brutal and unforgiving, and any character that does die is dead forever. So this game is way more challenging than it already would have been, because one mistake here will cost you possibly your entire party. Now, of course, after each trip to the dungeon, you'll get a chance to recruit some new party members, and the ones you currently have that are suffering from too high stress or need healing can be sent out to the tavern or the chapel to relieve some of their stress or their ailments. Or you can send them to the sanitarium, where you can try and get rid of some of their negative personality traits or reinforce their positive ones and lock them in. You can also go to the blacksmith to upgrade your gear. You can head to the guild to upgrade your fighting skills. You can work with a survivalist to improve your camping skills. Camping, by the way, is another thing that comes into play later in the game. When you start doing longer trips to the dungeons, you will actually get to take a small rest in the middle of the dungeon to camp. There, your characters will have a different set of skills they can use to kind of heal or de-stress each other. Just do other things that kind of benefit the party. And all of this might sound like a lot to take in, and it absolutely is. In fact, this game tells you right from the very beginning that it expects a lot from you, and it will punish you often. And boy, is it not lying. There's a lot to manage, and there is a lot that can go wrong. But because of that, the level of difficulty and constant risk and everything in this game really makes you feel accomplished every time you do complete a dungeon run. Even just the little small victories here feel like a big deal. Really, overall, in a day and age where difficult games are becoming kind of a fad, and people are trying to make their things, like your Bloodborne or Dark Souls, trying to make them as difficult as they can just for the sake of being difficult, this game really sets itself apart. This game is also making itself sometimes over-the-top difficult, but it feels like it's that way for a reason. It doesn't feel like they're forcing in a difficulty just to be a dick. It feels like here they're doing it because they really want you to work for the end game stuff. They want you to earn each of those small victories you get. They really want to challenge you. I'm not even a big fan of a lot of those other difficult games, Bloodborne, Dark Souls. None of those did it for me, but this game I absolutely love. I think it's built great. I think the learning curve and difficulty here really actually add to the game. This was one I was actually excited to play through, and will continue to play through even now that I've reviewed it, and will hopefully eventually get to beat. So if you want a fun and rewarding experience that's also kind of hard and challenging, will really make you think and work for it, Darkest Dungeon is absolutely a recommendation. Okay, see, after all that nice shit I said, I played the game a little more, and I just wiped my party by accidentally going into a dungeon a level higher than I should have. So, you know what? Fuck this game.